call this meeting to order of the Public Safety Finance and Strategic Support Committee for Thursday, September 17th.
Arenas?
Here.
Jones?
Here.
Crosco? Jimenez?
Here.
Peralez?
Here.
Thank you.
Great. And first item we have is our work plan. Staff doesn't have any items that they wish to drop or defer. Any recommendations from my committee members? And if not, if we can get a motion to accept.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay. And we have one member of the public would like to speak on the work plan, Blair Beekman. And if anybody would like to speak on any items today, if you're watching via YouTube or cable TV, you'll have to switch over to either our Zoom or call in at 408-638-0968 to speak by phone. You can press *9 if you are on the phone, or just a raise hand function on Zoom if you'd like to speak on an item. And if we can go ahead and let Blair speak now.
Hi, thanks a lot for offering public comment on your work plan items. You didn't used to do that when we meet in person so long ago now. And thank you that you're doing it here on Zoom. And hopefully in the future, maybe you can offer a sentence or two what exactly the work plans you approve each month in each meeting. If you can offer a sentence or two to the public, that would be very helpful. And otherwise, that's about all I have to say. I just wanted to thank yourselves for allowing the concept of public comment for this item, as it seems deserved that it needs public comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Blair. And our work plan and the agenda is, for everybody's knowledge, is what you can look at online, the agendas that we post ahead of time. And then typically if staff is going to recommend anything to be added or dropped, deferred, it will show up there. And then committee members can make the same recommendations if they'd like at committee meetings. We typically don't have a lot of changes. And so as today, as we don't have any. And so if we can just get a roll call vote.
Arenas?
Yes.
Jones?
Aye.
Crosco?
Aye.
Jimenez?
Yes.
Peralez?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to consent, which we don't actually have anything on consent. So we'll go down now to item D1, which is our police department operations and performance bi-monthly status report.
And so, good afternoon. I just wanted to acknowledge Lieutenant Cook, because I believe this is his last PISFIS meeting. He's got a smile on his face because he is retiring, I believe, at the end of the week, and I'm surely going to miss him. He's been instrumental on the reform efforts we've been making so far and doing all the Public Records Act requests work that's been a lot lately, and just wanted the committee to know. I certainly thank him on behalf of the city manager's office and the workforce for all the work you have done, Paul, and I'm going to miss you a lot.
Thank you very much. It's those are kind words, and I'm grateful to hear them.
Well, welcome, Lieutenant Cook, and that does explain your smile. You
yes,
probably won't be able to take it off all week, so.
Yeah, congratulations.
There's been a lot of committee and council meetings this week, and this will be my last one. So it's kind of a bittersweet thing. And let me see if I can get my bi-monthly presentation up for you folks, and then we'll get started here. And can you folks see that on your screen now? Yes, okay, thank you very much, sir.
Yep.
So my name is Lieutenant Paul Cook. I am the commander of the Research and Development Unit of the San Jose Police Department, and I'm here today to present the police department's bi-monthly operations and performance status report. And so today we are going to be covering citywide crime statistics, which is our standard report out on Uniform Crime Report. And we are also going to touch in, as is becoming standard now, on the sexual assault strategy update with regards to the sexual assault work plan. So we're going to talk about 5-year trends, and we're going to talk about the work item updates to bring you folks up to date and talk about some items of note this month. So if you look at the overall Part 1 crime, as a total, it's down 5.2% over this time last year. And violent crimes are down across the board when compared to this time last year. Most notably, our rape offenses are down 12% and robbery is down 15.6%. Overall, it is down 10% compared to last year. But in raw numbers, homicide, rape, and aggravated assault are actually tracking much closer to the 5-year trend. Let me show you the 5-year trend here. So if you look at the 5-year trend in raw numbers for this time of year, although we're doing much better than last year, where we're at essentially is tracking on the 5-year average. Aggravated assaults are also tracking. I'm sorry, I take that back up. Most of the violent crime is down against the 5-year average, but aggravated assaults are tracking actually very close to the 5-year trend. The one exception is robbery, which is significantly below last year and below the 5-year average. So we're doing very well in that area right now. Looking down to the property offenses, burglary and larceny are both down 3% and 9% respectively, while theft of automobiles is actually up 7%. However, you may recall that we've been seeing a downward trend in auto theft for a few years now. So even with a 7% bump, we're still well below the 5-year average when you look at the raw numbers for the number of vehicle thefts this year. Over the 5-year trend, we would expect to see about 4,200 this time of year. And right now we're at 39 compared to last year's 3,600 for this time of year. So that's the UCR. If we go into the sexual assault strategy update section and we look at the 5-year trend, what this table shows is a 5-year average for the component offenses that make up what we report out as UCR Part 1 rape. And in this chart, we compare the same period for each year. So because this is the data that's available to us now is January through July, we are comparing to what the numbers were in January of July over the last 5 years. And in order to pull this level of detail, we had to use an internal database, which may not match the historical UCR reports because this database includes updates such as reclassification of a crime or unfounding of a crime as a result of the actual investigation that may be underway. Overall, the numbers for 2020 are less than the peak we saw last year. In fact, this year's 318 incident total tracks exactly on the 5-year average, even though it's lower than last year's. And this implies that the steep increases we've seen earlier in the decade may possibly be plateauing, and we're keeping a close eye on that. When compared to last year, if you look at some of the component offenses here, rape, domestic rape, sodomy, I'm sorry, attempted rape, sodomy, oral copulation, and foreign object are all down. But where we're seeing the increases this year compared to last is in the spousal rape, domestic rape, and domestic attempted rape. So there seems to be a trend associated with either spouse sex assault or sex assault among people living as cohabitants. If we look at the work item implementation status, I like to start with this pie chart so you folks can see the green, which is what's been implemented, the blue, which is in progress and nearly implemented, or working on being implemented is probably a better way of putting that. And the red is the stuff that is still pending. So this is a slight increase in the SJPD items, and there has not been a significant increase in or a change in the countywide items since I last reported to you in June. This slide actually represents all the component work items that make up the slide we just looked at. So for the San Jose work items, Since we last reported to the committee, the school intervention training item has moved from the in progress to the implemented category. And the substandard housing study has moved from the pending category to the in progress category. I have a similar chart here for the countywide work items. Last time we reported to the committee, I mentioned that the district attorney's office was leading a pilot project on strangulation evidence collection. I'm still classifying that as an in progress item because I think we need to finish out the pilot project and come up with some permanent implementation as a result of what we learned in the pilot project. So I'm not going to classify that as implemented until we get through the pilot project. But what is of note is that we have joined that pilot project. When that pilot project was started earlier in the year, it involved some other police departments working in concert with the district attorney's office. And since then, the San Jose Police Department has joined it so that we can try to increase the number of incidents where we're able to use this resource and therefore have more evidence to base further decisions on in the future. Some recent items to note. The creation of the Special Victims Unit has enabled more proactive work on our human trafficking and internet crimes against children teams. And since the inception of this unit, there have been 6 human trafficking operations and 20 child pornography arrests. Both of these teams are using this ability to have more proactive time to develop some new and innovative proactive strategies. I would love to share them with you, but I think that might actually compromise the effectiveness of these sorts of things. But just rest assured that we're actually kind of expanding our techniques for how we proactively deal with the human trafficking and internet crimes against children areas. The school age intervention training item that I said has moved into the implemented category. Actually, we had to retool that, not us, but our vendor had to retool that as an online course. And so that's why through the summer, through the spring and summer, that wasn't being delivered, but that has now been retooled as an online course. And actually the very first offering is scheduled for next week. And I know that they haven't actually started yet, but they're starting next week. So I've moved that in the implemented category because that's scheduled and happening. And if we move on to the next slide, I want to round this out by talking about the substandard housing study that is one of the work items on the sexual assault work plan. We mentioned last time that the funding was in place and that we were working on writing the RFP. So the request for proposal language that was being formulated last time is actually in its final stages of revision at our fiscal unit. And because this is essentially a consultant project, the police department will be able to take this to procurement on our own. So we won't have to reach out through another layer of city procurement. So that's going to make it much easier for us to engage in procurement. The bullets on this slide represent sort of the broad stroke description of how we're structuring our request for proposal and how we hope we'll be able to formulate the study after we start getting responses from potential consultants who can perform that for us. And that carries me through the basic report out on bi-monthly status, and I'm available for your questions or comments.
Well, thank you very much. And we will go over to the public first. And for anybody, again, I'll do a reminder for anybody wishing to speak. You can raise your hand if you're here with us on Zoom or press *9 if you're on the phone. And we have 2 public commenters right now. And first up, we have Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you. It's nice we have at least 2 public commenters today. Thank you. For this item, this can be a real good day to follow up on the ideas of what was spoken about on Tuesday. And I was really impressed how you, as a city, you tried to offer ideas of Councilperson Arenas' domestic violence ideas in policing at this time. That was on Tuesday. And I just thought that, you know, you tried to bring a level of day-to-day approaches to policing at this time, and I thank you for that. I'm trying to figure out ways that, you know, the body camera footage that was able to be brought out for the protests, how can that be a day-to-day process? How can it be easier and more accessible for people to receive body camera footage for, say, their court trials and things like that? So, you know, we're in a real upheaval to try to figure out better practices for ourselves, and we all know them inside, you know, that have been inside us for years now. And good luck to all of us how we can work out how to bring that out of ourselves and talk to each other about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. And I forgot to mention every public speaker will have 2 minutes. And now we have someone on the phone. The last 4 digits are 5140, and you'll have to press *6 to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'd like to know what the action plan is for San Jose PD regarding overnight shifts. There's a lot of crime that happens between midnight and 6. I'm in Southern Division, District 9, Pam Foley's district. And there's been a lot of car thefts over the last 3 or 4 years. Mine was that I actually had a car stolen. Seems to be a car stolen almost every other day in this neighborhood. And there's just clearly not enough patrols in this area. You know, it seems as if there's 3 people drinking beer in downtown San Jose. All of a sudden there's 24 squad cars and, you know, 60 police officers. But man, you know, crime out here, it never gets solved. It never gets prevented. And if someone's sleeping in a car, it takes an hour for San Jose PD to show up. It's really, really pathetic. And I just want to know what you're doing about the stolen car issue. I mean, I've even had a license plate stolen off my car. You know, it's very irritating for these things. And then, you know, we need more police out here between midnight and 6, but all we seem to get is a bunch of people on motorcycles hiding behind a porta potty on Cherry Avenue, and Brian trying to make sure someone doesn't roll through a stop sign. That's not policing, that's revenuing, and it's crap. And you guys need to get your act together, and you should have given the people the grape shot in 2016 when you had the chance to do 2016, instead of just playing pocket pool, letting Trump supporters get beat down. 4 years later, the chickens came home to roost. Shame on you.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll go over to my colleagues, and I see Councilmember Arenas has her hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize. It's hard for me to shift, so I apologize for the delay. Okay, so I just want to, first of all, just congratulate you for your retirement. I can see that smile, never ending. I just can only imagine how I would feel when at the end of my career, and your service, it sounds like from folks that I've spoken to, don't know that you and I have personally worked together, but I know that you have a reputation that precedes you, and I just want to thank you for the service that you've offered our city. I'm sad to see you go because I know that you hold a lot of institutional knowledge that many of our police force would benefit from, but I know that folks want to reach into their a different phase of their lives, and maybe you want to travel. Well, not right now during the pandemic, but maybe you want to do something else. It'll be home base for now, but we will miss you. Thank you so much for your service. And I'm really grateful actually for this report that you're bringing some really good news to us, particularly, and I'm not going to push you on this because I respect that you have your strategies at work with internet crimes against children. And so I'm really happy to hear that. It would be great to hear maybe of some of the numbers. And nothing in terms of strategies, nothing that would compromise any of your any of the work. I just wonder, thinking about right now our pandemic, a lot of our children are online. And I know that when my kiddo, my 5-year-old logs in for her kinder class, there's children who are at a childcare site, not at home, but at a childcare site because their parents are working, they're probably essential service workers or beyond. And I just wonder if those numbers have increased. Unfortunately, there's different ways of getting to our children, and I'm guessing perpetrators at this point are probably getting online just as much as our children are. So it would be great to see what those numbers look like, if there's any increase in trends, and if there's things that we can do as parents now that our children are, they have hotspots lent out from our county office of ed, and maybe they're just their own devices and not devices that are controlled by our school districts. And I know our school districts have done their job in terms of maybe limiting some of what our children can see on those devices, but not every parent knows how to do that on their own device. So it would be great to receive more information. I think as a parent, there's other parents just like me who are working, and and some of us may not be savvy enough to do that on our own devices, right? So thank you for sharing that information. It would be great, like I said, just to see and really just to appreciate the level of work that you're doing there. I can only imagine, and I don't think it's like this, but the To Catch a Predator program is the only level of frame of reference that I have, right? And so it doesn't really matter what I know about it. I know that you're doing the good work, and so it would be great just to see the result of that. The other information, I wanted to thank you and also look at the crime statistics and appreciate how some of these crimes have been reduced, especially when you compare them to 2019. But I wanted to hear from you what you thought about our rape number. Even though it is lower than 2019, it's the same as 2018. And for a pandemic, I wonder if you have any insights in terms of, they're obviously not domestic because they would have been categorized as such. And so, and our schools are closed, or at least a lot of our state schools are closed. And so where are some of these rapes happening, or what is the trend that you're seeing in terms of these rapes?
I think it's actually pretty notable that the 3 areas we saw increases in were spousal, domestic rape, and domestic attempted sex assault. I mean, those are actually, while we've seen a pretty significant decrease in your classic simple rape classification, that has been kind of eaten up by the increase in the spousal and the 2 domestic categories. Now, this early, and we have to recognize this, and this has to be my caveat, that this early in a explanation of crime stats is bound to be speculative on the part of law enforcement professionals, because it's really only in hindsight that you get very clear understandings of what happened. But considering that we're still in the middle of the pandemic and we're still doing a lot of shelter in place, it's not the least bit surprising to me that where we're seeing the increases, we're seeing a decrease in the typical rape. So if somebody were on a date and were raped, that would be very different than somebody who was raped at home by a roommate. And so, I think that's why we're seeing the increases in the domestic classifications and the spouse classification. I also, as long as we're talking about the numbers this year, this year are less than last year, but they're almost spot on for 2018, right? And we saw this really big increase and really they're within 10 or 12 incidences of matching 2017. And so it was 13, 14, 15. It was in that early part of the decade when we saw just a very major shift in how our country looks at sexual assault, the reporting of sexual assault. I don't think you can understate the effect that the Me Too movement had on people being willing to come forward to the police and talk to us about things that have happened to them. So we've moved in this decade from an era where people were less likely to report to us to an era where people are more likely to report to us. And watching that, I've been wondering at what point will it plateau? So at what point is the number of people who are reporting to us going to kind of catch up with what was really happening? Because I think we all understand that there's a lot of underreporting that goes on in this area. And so how close are we going to get the willingness of the people who live in our community to report to the actual number of incidences? And so it's telling that in these last 2 or 3 years, we've starting to see a plateau. I think it's also going to take some time before we can look back and see how much of this sexual assault work plan that we've been focusing on so hard for 18 or 20 months now, what effect has that had on the actual number of occurrences versus on the number of reports? But all said, I think that this sort of plateauing that we're seeing may represent having reached the level of reporting that we can expect from our community at this time. And that it much more likely represents the actual occurrences compared to what we were seeing in 2012 and 2013. I'm talking and I can't hear you. I don't know. Are you? Yeah. I started to tell you I couldn't. I was.
Yeah, you know what? I'm sure my kids use that on me all the time. Like, I can't hear you. I apologize. I keep forgetting to click on this darn mouse. I'm doing this a little differently today. Yes, I agree with you. I think there was a misclassification in terms of rape. As you probably would agree that sodomy or copulation, foreign object are all and should be under the definition of rape, as well as the rest of these categories. And I thought
actually, these all are under the UCR definition of rape, and that's why I'm reporting them to you now. Yes.
Right. But they weren't before, right? They weren't before, and
some of them weren't. You're correct. Yes.
You alluded to it, right?
Yeah.
But leaving that behind, and even the Me Too movement, and I appreciate your observation in terms of the patterns. Although the last time the chief brought in somebody from the University of Texas, and I forget the professor's name, and he had done a kind of a quick review of what was happening here in San Jose. And so I'm really interested in hearing from you as somebody who's been a fixture in San Jose for many, many years. He said, for the last 8 years, there has been an increase in rapes in the city of San Jose. And so this timeline is not necessarily the same timeline as the Me Too movement, right? The Me Too movement is more the last 3 to 5 years, maybe 5 years, maybe stretching it. But certainly the last 3 years. And so he said, that he couldn't really tell us what the pattern was, what it was about. And that's why I asked one of the questions about, is overcrowding part of that? Is that a factor in that? And I wonder again if it has to do with overcrowding, and because as I've been told by the chief, this is a crime of opportunity many times, especially with relating to children. And so I wonder if because we are sheltered in place, we really don't have a lot of opportunity to interact with one another, or at least we're trying not to. That this number of rapes, or 173, even though I agree overall, I think it's plateauing, and I agree with your observation of those numbers, and probably relating back to the Me Too movement, that people, both men and women, are just more open about reporting this. But it's sheltered in place and basically isolated, and this number is pretty solid. And so I wonder if this in the study that you're going to conduct really soon, and the RFP that you're releasing, Are you including that question? And I think I had asked it and I proposed it the last time we had met. You know, is overcrowding a factor when we talk about rape or we talk about sexual assaults? And the last time that this information was reported to us, they brought in the places that the locations of the crimes, but it didn't necessarily tell us whether the perpetrator and the victim of the crime were both living or residing in the same place. It just told us the location of it, and a lot of us, of course, you know, residential.
Yeah, so we're writing, the parameters that are written into the RFP. They include a couple of things that we really do hope is going to help us get into that area of understanding. It's hard. It's hard to find the data set that tells you how crowded any given house is. It's really hard when you look at, assessing data that we have. Where do you find that data? And so it's a real challenge for us in structuring something at this price point where we can't go out, and do a census within this price point. How do we figure that out? And so the way we're looking at this is that we're going to be breaking everything down in distribution. The crime distributions as they occur by zip code, crime type, age of victim, and that victim's relationship to the offender. So that is sort of like the first item and one of the primary things we're hoping to accomplish with this study. And then, and we have I don't know if this is good fortune. We have the good fortune of doing this in a census year. So we're going to have much, by the time we get these numbers crunched, we're hoping that we'd be able to compare that to census data, which is probably the closest we're going to be able to come to say how densely populated is a given zip code, and then what kind of crimes and what kind of victims and what kind of relationships to offenders are occurring. And it's only by, cross comparing all that we're going to be able to get close to answering the kind of questions you're asking at this price point.
So you will be set up to take a look at, because of all of what you said you're going to track is the age, the relationship to victim, the type, and zip code. But it still would, I don't know if it would answer and help me understand this. How would we, from what I understand, this is one, a crime of opportunity, but two, I think a very high percentage of victims know their perpetrator, right? It's somebody that they already know. It's very uncommon to have a rape that people don't know, or a sexual assault incident from people that they don't know, especially younger, which is the majority of the crimes here in San Jose is children under the age of 12. And so, I bring back the question is, because this number looks pretty solid at 173, or, a lot of these numbers continue to be pretty solid in any of their categories, that it would, I don't know if it would be reasonable to assume that maybe some of those perpetrators are, of course, known to them, or so are they living with them? And maybe it's not a question of overcrowding, but a living arrangement, or, are they living in the same residence as the victim? And you don't have to deal with the question of whether it's overcrowding or not. It's just a matter of whether they're living in the same residence, as many families have to, rent out a room or most of their home in order to make it, or their apartments for that matter, right?
So when we talk about relationship to victim, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. Are they cohabitants? Do they live in the same? Because obviously, if it's a known offender, then we know where that offender lives almost all the time, right? And certainly, if they're living in the same household as the victim, we're going to know that they do. So that data is present. So when we talk about comparing the victim and to the offender and identifying their relationship, certainly living together is one of those relationships. So that is certainly what we mean when we talk about that in this industry. And we're still in a place where we're going to have to wait and see what consultants respond to this request for proposal. And when they look at our data, what they tell us they're able to accomplish with that. But I just wanted you to understand that this is what we're trying to do, and this is where we're structuring and how we're trying to move forward.
I really appreciate that, and thank you for clarifying that. So that means that you will be, because you're not only gathering location but relationship, that you think between those two, you'll be able to decipher whether they're living in the same place or actually get the address or whatever it is, but get to the bottom of that piece. And simply because we know that this trend has been happening for the last 8 years, that we break that pattern by targeting and creating strategies, just in the same way that you'd mentioned earlier, through internet crimes against children. You have your certain strategies that are really effective, and I want us to also think about what are some of the strategies that are really effective for children under the age of 12, primarily with young girls of color, Latina girls. What is the best strategy that we could use? And I know, just offhand, we are already doing some of that, because you just told me that you were going to start the class next week for the intervention class, and that the provider is going to take it online. I know that's one of the ways that we can get to this crime, or maybe prevent it, or at least build up the confidence in many of our young children to be able to tell other people or stand for themselves or fight back, or whatever it is that is the best approach to this. So I'll move on and ask you about, now that the provider is going to move into an online format, is that going to allow us to have a larger classroom, if you will, or will there be limits to it? I just think it's exciting to take it online, because I think we can include a mass of people, but I don't know how that works.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't have that level of detail where I can answer that question for you today without speculating, so I won't. But I'll let the unit commander who's organizing that effort know about your question, whether they're expanding the class size, because I just don't know.
Okay, that would be and if it's oh my goodness, I can't even focus anymore. Look at those chubby cheeks. Jorge is with us. He's a VIP here. Hola, Jorge. So I am absolutely distracted, but I was going to ask you a question. So if the online format is more effective and less costly, I wonder if we can do more. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about that as you get to the bottom of that, Lieutenant, and so we can be more supportive of that, because I know offhand this is a really great strategy, and I know our service providers have all mentioned to me and made sure to tell me what a great job you are all doing, and there's folks who are actually going to copy some of what we're doing in these intervention classes. So my last question is around this trend that I'm talking about with that has been happening in San Jose, certainly around rape, and I'm going to include just the and sexual assault against children. One of the items that I had shared, I think, with Sergeant, he's a sergeant in charge of training, and he's going to come to my mind as soon as I'm done. But I talked to him about making sure that we incorporated in the trauma-informed training that we're going to move into with our police officers. And Jennifer, I think you know this because you've heard me say this before, is that because we know that the majority of crimes are happening against children, against young Latina girls under the age of 12, that the trauma-informed training should also incorporate some level of early childhood, or maybe not early, because just childhood development, and maybe trauma, signs of trauma for children. As you all know, that signs of stress can look like ADD, right, in some children, and it just doesn't look the same. And it might help our police officers when they respond to a call to be able to say, and I don't expect them to know on every age, but to maybe remember and recall from some of their trainings that this is normal for a child to behave, especially under duress. And I think that would be very appropriate and very effective for our officers once they have responded to a call. And so I wasn't sure if that was already integrated into the training or if that's somehow in the works in the graph that you showed us. There was a lot of completed items, and I'm really grateful to that.
Yeah, so the trauma-informed approach training really does have to have a different feel to it, whether you are, depending on who you're delivering that to. So when we choose to deliver that to our communications personnel who don't have face-to-face contact, it's got to be kind of a slightly different set of knowledge that we deliver to those particular students. And when we deliver it to our patrol officers, it's distinct and somewhat different than what we give to our detectives, who we expect to have kind of a deeper interaction with the victim as we move through the follow-up, particularly, and this is especially true in sexual assault areas and particularly in child sexual assault. And then even within that category of workers, we have people who specialize very deeply in interviewing children in a way that is not harmful to the child survivor, but also effective at gathering information and evidence, that is sound and hasn't been, isn't the result of leading or anything like that. So those skill sets and those different work groups, just by definition, the skill sets they need to have are pretty distinctly different, which is why the training is unique to each of those groups. And as far as the behavioral signs of trauma with young children, particularly in that relevance to how it sometimes manifests similar to ADD. We've heard that before from the committee. I know that the team that's working on this is aware of that. And I'm going to share this with the commander as well. I think it's interesting. We are about 6 months away from that unit coming out here and giving you their annual deep dive into this stuff. And so I think it'll be really helpful that we'll be getting close to the end of the trauma-informed training by then, and they can explain to you how they parsed out each of those different groups. And they also should be able to talk to you, having had 6 months of it. And by then we'll probably be getting near the end of some of these COVID restrictions, hopefully. I'll be able to talk about the question you asked about the online class size and whether that online delivery is something that would be worth continuing after the COVID restrictions, or whether it would be more effective to go back to in-person. I can't answer that question now because we haven't done enough of it to even know. But I do think that in March, when the commander's out here talking to you, the person who really is a subject matter expert, as opposed to just delivering for the department in general, I think you'll be able to take a deeper dive then. I'll be sure they're aware so that they'll be prepared to talk to you about it.
I appreciate that. It was Lieutenant Lombardo. I knew I was going to remember it. He's vivacious, and I know that he captured what I was sharing with him, but I wanted to make sure that I just brought it up once again. I know that our detectives, especially in our specialized units, are very well trained, have a deeper level of understanding in terms of interview tactics. I just think that it also would benefit our officers who are responding to our calls and are essentially our first responders to some of these very sensitive crimes, for them to have a level of understanding that would maybe ease and help in an interaction. I don't think that responding to a crime like this is easy for a police officer, and any information I'm thinking would that would facilitate it would probably be helpful. So those are my questions. I'm really grateful once again for all the progress that has been done. I want to thank you once again for the report on this, and Jennifer for your endless support. of this agenda against sexual assault and domestic violence. And so I appreciate it, and for the chair for allowing me to ask all of these very in-depth questions. So thank you, and happy retirement if I don't get to speak again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any other colleagues of mine with their hand up. So if we can get a motion in a second on this item.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And I think this is it for you, Lieutenant Cook. Sorry, we don't have any other tough questions for you, and we won't probe too much.
I'll let you slide, sir.
Thanks. Yeah, we won't probe too much into what your next exciting step or hopefully vacation at some point, as Councilmember Arenas pointed out, will be. But best of luck. Certainly, thank you for your many years of service here to this city. And we can do a roll call vote, please.
Arenas,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Roscoe,
Aye.
Jimenez,
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Moves us on to item D2, which is our Police Department Recruitment Activity Annual Report.
Thank you, Councilmember. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent.
Welcome.
Okay, let me share my screen here. And can you see that all right? Okay.
Yep, we can see it as well. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Donahue. I am currently transitioning from the commander of the recruiting and backgrounds units to taking over for Lieutenant Cook in the research and development unit. So today I'm going to be giving you an overview of the recruiting efforts in the last fiscal year and where we're going to be moving into the next fiscal year. And I'm going to start with a little bit of the current state on police recruiting. So in September of last year, the Police Executive Research Forum published a report entitled "The Workforce Crisis and What Police Agencies Are Doing About It." And in this report, they outlined 3 significant reasons that law enforcement agencies of all sizes all across the country are experiencing fewer applicants. And the first being that fewer people are just plain not applying to be police officers. Most agencies across the country are reporting an approximately 30% decline in applications coming in. The second reason is that more officers are leaving their departments and the policing profession as a whole prior to reaching retirement age. And the majority of these are leaving in the first 5 years before they've really experienced a tenure in that police department. And they found that the majority of those exits are because they're able to get better pay and benefits in other fields outside of law enforcement. And the third reason that we're experiencing fewer applications is that more officers, or fewer officers, I should say, is that more officers are becoming eligible for retirement. There was a big push in the 90s to have an increase in law enforcement in this country, and they're all reaching their retirement age now. So now all these departments are experiencing crises of these officers leaving and all that institutional knowledge leaving the department. So when we couple this with a strong economy and job growth, and then of course the current social and political climate, the majority of departments are reporting that 30% decline. So in the San Jose Police Department, we have had a good 7 years. If you look at the graph on the screen, that's the 7 years of recruiting applications biannual, not by fiscal year, across the last 7 years. And you see this trend line on an increase. And the main reason is going to be that military in lieu that was implemented in 2015 and 2016 at the beginning of the 2016 fiscal year. And that gave us a big bump in applications, which increased that trend line significantly. However, since that big bump, you've also seen the applications continue to decrease per year. In the last 6 months, we've had a relatively steady amount of applications coming into the department across both communications and police department. If you look at the graph on your screen, the green line at the top is going to be police applications, and the blue line just under it is going to be the communications applications. So what you see here is when we look at the sworn applications, you see a very slight decrease since the COVID pandemic hit at the beginning of March. We tracked it every single week and we see it starting to go down a little bit. It's not significant. It's actually far less than the 30% reported by other agencies. However, there is a small decrease. When you compare that to communications, communications is actually going up. We see a big jump in the communications applications as we push into another hiring cycle for communications that'll carry on into November. So the question I like to ask myself is why? Why is this happening? Why do other departments have this 30% reduction? Why are we succeeding? And when we look at the recruiting efforts for the recruiting unit over the last fiscal year, these are the 6 types of events that we did. We had career and job fairs, colleges and university presentations, the community events, the unaffiliated academy presentations. And just to explain what that means is when people apply to a police department like ours, we will hire you and put you through a police academy. However, there's an opportunity for people to basically fund their own way through the academy. They're able to pay their own way, like in the South Bay Regional Public Safety Training Academy. And once they go through that, smaller agencies will hire them, like Campbell, Santa Clara, they'll hire out of South Bay. So what we do is we go to those academies where people are hoping to get hired out of, and we will ask them to apply to our agency. And then if they do, and we accept them, we actually put them through our academy again. And the reason for that is that we have a very, very good police academy. We've added more time to it. We've had experience with the recruits coming out of there being exceptionally trained and doing very well after they've gone through our academy. So after looking at all these recruiting efforts, we are also focusing on our target audiences. So the first part is that we look for candidates who are likely to choose us as a career path, not just a job. We don't want someone that's going to come work here for a few years and then go find somewhere else to work. We want you to come here knowing that you're joining a family and that you want to spend the entirety of your career here in any aspect that you come in, be it sworn, communications, or through our data specialists. Secondly, we look for people who align with our department's core values of integrity, courage, service, innovation, respect, diversity, and excellence. And rather than trying to teach these things to the recruits at the academy, we actually look for it in the recruiting and hiring process. And we look for it in their personal lives, what people say about them, so that we're trying to hire the best person, not just someone that we can teach to be a good person. The third thing we look for is diversity, and we seek those that are a reflection of our community, as we've talked about many times, but not just ethnically, like Hispanic or African American, but we're looking for some of the subsegments in these overarching categories. Like we look for people in the LGBTQ community. We do specific events for that community, in the Sikh community, and the Vietnamese community. So I'll show you in just a minute some of the events that we'll do targeting these specific communities to find people who will reflect the diversity in our city. We look for females because in this profession, it's male dominated. Across the country, it's a roughly 8 to 10% male or female ratio. And what we've found is the value in females in police departments, or in our department specifically. And we've done such a good job in the last 5 years. We've increased from what's traditionally this 8 to 10%. In the last 5 years, it's been 16% female that we've hired. And in the last academy that's in right now, Academy 38 is 22% female. We look for athletes who understand how to work in a team environment and they have this strong intrinsic value of hard work. And we look at college students and graduates. And then finally, at military personnel. And the military personnel bring a life experience that you can't really find anywhere else when you've joined the military, especially this being a paramilitary organization. But the fact is, they've experienced life, and that helps us. So that's why we started the Military in Lieu program in 2015. So for our diversity-specific recruiting, these are some of the events on the left column are events that we had just in the last fiscal year where our recruiters went out and specifically recruited at these events. And this is, by the way, only diversity specific. They've done double that in all different kinds of events around the Bay Area, from fitness festivals to competitions, sporting events, that kind of thing. And then in the right column, you're looking at colleges and universities. Now, these are rated high in ethnic diversity. And so what will happen is the recruiters will go to these universities, and either the university has a job fair, or we've actually had the opportunity, based on our relationships with professors, to be able to go into administration of justice or criminal justice classes and speak to their class during class period and recruit right out of the classroom. And it's purely based on the relationship that the recruiters develop with the professors at those universities to be able to do that. So we want to see how we're doing. And this is the reported ethnicities from the current academy class, the class that's in right now. And if you look here, what you're going to see is 87% of the class said not specified. Over the last few years, we've seen this number increase significantly. And in this last class, it's 87%. So we can't statistically measure how well we're doing on recruiting ethnicities, because they're not reporting their ethnicities. As a matter of fact, if you look on this, there isn't anyone that reported being African-American in the class. Everybody who did report either reported some type of Hispanic, Latino, Mexican-American, unspecified Hispanic or Latino, or white. However, when you look at the class, it's incredibly diverse. This is Academy Class 38. There are actually 49 left, unfortunately, between the time I made this slide and this presentation. One of them has left. But this is what they look like when you look at them. So we can't report their ethnicity statistically, but we look like a reflection of our community. Looking ahead, we have a couple of hurdles we have to jump through. First being the current political and social climate with law enforcement. And I don't know how this is going to affect recruiting in the long run. I know it's more difficult. I know we saw in the earlier chart a drop in the last 2 months of recruiting because of the current political and social climate. Now, as the pandemic continues, we've increased our distance learning. We've increased our ability to Zoom into and out of classrooms and into and out of job fairs. However, the job fairs themselves haven't been as effective as they were prior to this. So we know that we want to continue the process that we've started, right? We know that those 6 things that I showed you earlier, they work. They work because we're not reporting the lower recruiting 30% less than other agencies. However, we don't know how that's going to be affected by the climate and the pandemic going forward. What we are going to do is continue to do what we're doing. We're going to continue to work with our colleges and universities, our sports teams. We're going to continue to go out into the community whenever we can, visit job fairs, even though it's digitally, visit academies as they are being held in person. As a matter of fact, this week, 2 of our recruiting unit went down to Southern California, and they were in San Diego and San Marcos at police academies recruiting, and they got a couple of applicants straight from Southern California this week. So we have a good formula. We do a lot of social media marketing. And one of the things that we started when I came into the unit is we started very candid social media. We would have our officers take pictures, selfies with the people that they're doing stuff with. These photos in the middle here are actually a group of applicants that are taking a test, and we went out and took pictures of it and posted it right then, saying, hey, take a look at this. These are our applicants taking a test, come join us, kind of thing. So we're trying to match social media marketing with our ad campaigns, as well as getting out into Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and really that quick blast of information. We have 2 really exciting things that I'm going to report to you right now. The first is I'd like to introduce you to Aaliyah Machiwala and Millie, her dog. Aaliyah just joined our team, and she is now part of the recruiting unit on a temporary duty assignment basis from communications. She's a call taker up in communications. And they have transferred her down here temporarily just to do communications recruiting, testing, and everything ahead of where they move into the hiring and background process. So Aaliyah's been a tremendous asset having her down here with us, and she fit into the team seamlessly. We love having her down here. And that actually created a unique thing that we have here now with the recruiting unit. All three aspects of recruiting for our department that our department does. Now, I'm not talking about hiring from the city, but from our specific department are done by the recruiting unit now. All data specialists, call takers, dispatchers, and police officers are recruited out of the recruiting unit. And that gives us this unique opportunity to tell people, hey, I don't know if you've thought about it, but come work for San Jose Police Department. And if you do, we have a home for you, whether you want to analyze data, whether you want to work with reports in the back, whether you want to have contact with the public, do you want to be a call taker or dispatcher? Do you want to be a sworn officer? No matter what aspect of this kind of career you're looking for, you can come do it, and you can come through us, this one conduit now. The other thing we're really excited about is a new program called SJPD Fitness. We found a couple of things. First of all, that the process from application, when they may take the agility test, to when they actually start the academy can be up to 8 months. And when that happens, sometimes people stop working out because they passed the test. And then they would start the academy and not be fit for what they would be experiencing in the academy. The second thing is that it starts to give them a home, a relationship with our department. A lot of what we do is based on this idea of joining our family and becoming part of us. And so we started this fitness series about 6 weeks ago. And in the first evening, we had 23 participants. I'm sorry, 19 participants. Well, in the second time we did it, we had to shut it down due to air quality a few times. And the second time we did it, we had 23, and last week we had 35. Now, these are 35 people all going through the process with our department, all of them voluntarily coming out and working out. They're working out with both members of our recruiting unit as well as the actual TAC officers, the training officers at the police academy. So they do an actual academy workout, and then they actually bond and hang out together before and after these fitness events. And what we found is they're actually going to be coming into the police academy knowing people and feeling like they're already a part of something. So as long as they're in the process, they can join us in the SJPD Fitness Series. And this goes every week on Wednesday evenings. So the last thing I want to talk about is the recruiting team. Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually a picture of 2 weeks ago at SJPD Fitness where they came out and worked out with us. So the last thing I want to talk about is the recruiting team. Everything that you find that we've had successful in the recruiting unit is based on this team. And these are actually just 3 of them. We have some other personnel assigned to recruiting right now. 2 are temporarily assigned, as well as civilians who are assigned to the unit to help out. The relationship that these people build with the applicants is what gets them to come back and keep coming through our agency. I've been able to sit down with numerous applicants, and it's always this one-on-one relationship. The calls they get during the process, they'll get checked in on. They'll get, hey, have you signed up for our fitness series? Hey, have you gotten registered for this? Have you done this test yet? Let's walk you through this process. And we found that this one-on-one relationship is what entices people to come to us and then keeps them here. Even if they don't make it the first time, they'll test multiple times just to work for our agency because of the relationships that these recruiters are building with them. So I want to give them kudos for that. They're incredible at what they do. And that's all I have. Any questions?
All right, thank you very much. And appreciate that. We have a couple speakers of the public. Just to remind everybody, this is item D2, our Police Department Recruitment Activity Annual Report. And if you are joining us by Zoom, you just have to raise your hand. And if you are joining us over the phone, you'll have to press *9 if you'd like to speak. So first we'll go to Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you for this item. You reported before that police recruitment has been down over the past few years. And with all that's been going on in the past 6 months, I hope you can realize, there can be choices to move recruiting to like an every other year plan. And that I think is interesting idea. I know the city of San Francisco is working on such an idea, and other cities around the Bay Area are too as well. And it's important, I think. It's an important concept, and it's hurtful for yourselves, and it's not what you would all want to hear. But to the everyday public and the goals of real community policing ideas, it is important, and I hope you can be considering it and be open to ideas. I guess the other thought I had, I totally mean it in respect. I'm trying to practice that here in public speaking. How to speak ideas with respect. Is that one important concept. I've got 1:41 on my clock here. It's not moving. But an important concept in recruiting is simply to ask, I think Anthony Mata, who's a lieutenant maybe, he's a high up officer who attends many community meeting events. If he is not going to be, in the forerunning for choices, for the new police chief, I think he should be really thought of as how to consider the future of a police chief for San Jose. And he's a really nice guy, an interesting guy. And I think he has a good handle on how the community thinks and in terms of non-policing ideas, which is what we really need. And, if he is not going to be police chief, I really hope that's what you'll be looking for in a police chief, is someone like Anthony Mata. And I guess that's about all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. All right, and now we'll go over to my colleagues. We have Councilmember Jimenez.
Thank you so much, Mr. Donahue. Appreciated all the information. Seems like you guys are doing a great job. I just have a few questions given the state of the world presently. As you all know, for law enforcement, things aren't easy at the present time. And so the first question I had was related to the folks that are going out and recruiting. I mean, what have we found to be the sentiment out in the community as they're out there trying to talk up the police department, and rightfully so to a certain extent, I think. But how do they, what are they finding? What are the comments? What's the feedback they're getting as relates to public service in the police department?
Well, thank you, Councilmember. To be totally honest, the sentiment that we're finding in the community where we're recruiting is people still love the police department. And surprisingly, a good number of applicants came in and said, I see what's happening out there. I want to be a part of this. And you may see on our social media, we've started a social media hashtag, be the change you want to see. And it seems to be working. People want to be police officers. They want to work with the community and better this world.
Yeah, okay, very good, very good. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. The other question I had was, if you go back, I'm not sure if you can show us some of the slides, the one where a large part of the sort of pie chart was related to folks that didn't, I guess, chose not to identify to any particular race or ethnicity. Is that, I'm trying to remember if that's my...
Yeah, no problem. I can go back to it. That one.
Yeah, obviously, and I think you spent a little bit of time on this. I think recognizing that we probably would have questions about this, right?
Yes.
And so a good percent, I don't see a percentage on here, but a good percentage obviously not specified. And I know you paired this with the photo of the recruit class, the most recent one, I think. And it's obvious to me, at least, that it seemed very diverse on its face, right? Which is great. So can you take me through sort of the process when someone comes through, their recruiting class, academy class, they graduate, and how this is reported, and it seems to me based on this that it's optional, that you don't need to identify if you're African American or Latino or whatever, right? So is the correct interpretation of this simply that people are choosing not to identify?
That's correct. When you apply to our agency, we put you, the first place you apply is in a system called NeoGov, which is the industry standard for applying to a police department throughout the country. And that offers you the opportunity to say not specified on your race and ethnicity. Then the second place you're going to fill out paperwork is with the city of San Jose, where again, it's offered. In the past, NeoGov had offered it, and the city of San Jose had required disclosure of race and ethnicity. But in the last few years, that's actually changed. So we no longer have race and ethnicity required as disclosure on documents. So 87%, as you can see, there is 87% that chose not to disclose anywhere their race or ethnicity.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas as to why that may be, or any anecdotal sort of, I don't know. I'm just curious as to why that is.
I would say it's personal preference. It's up to the individual to what they disclose and how they sell. This is all self-reported.
Right. Yeah, and I understand it. I just, throughout our lives, each of us fills out information in which we're asked this type of stuff, and quite frankly, I always fill it out. I don't see it as being a bad thing, and not implying these people do, but just I'd be curious to understand sort of the rationale, right? I wonder if it's just an easy sort of default to go to. But so the other question I had related to this is, and I can imagine someone from the city attorney's office is on here as well. So if someone needs to chime in, please do so. But so we can require it, we're just choosing not to. Is that essentially what I'm hearing?
Council member, this is Danielle Keneally from the city attorney's office.
Yes.
And it's my understanding that we cannot mandate it.
Okay. Okay. So we just simply cannot ask the question. That's why.
I think
can't require the answering of the question.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess even some of the recruits answering this question, they're answering it, just not. I suspect, as we all think, it's not as accurate as it should be, right? But they are answering a question, I guess, right? Saying, "I choose not to identify," right? And so I guess the reason I'm asking this is that, is this, if you can help educate me, Danielle, is this tied to Prop 209 and some of the restrictions as it relates to governments asking for race and other type of data?
I do not believe it's tied to Prop 209.
Okay.
I believe it's tied to, there's a federal statute, I believe. I don't have it at my fingertips at the moment, but I believe it is a federal statute that requires, that prohibits us from mandating the identification of the applicant from being required to identify a particular ethnic group.
And do you know if that's specific to the police department, or just generally that's a broad policy that happens to apply to the police department?
It's broader than the police department.
Okay. So in other things that the city does, do we have the ability to require, or we just can't require anything like this?
It's my understanding we can't mandate it, but we can certainly get back to you with more specific information.
All right.
As to the source of the source of the prohibition and the extent of it.
Yeah, I'd like to know that, if at all possible, even if it's just a quick email or something. I think it's worthwhile. I think certainly the photo that Mr. Donahue showed us, obviously folks are diverse, but I think it'd be good in a number of different ways. I think it'd give us a good sense as to who's applying and who eventually makes it through this process. But in addition to that, I think it can give us more concrete data to help promote what we're doing, right? The number of folks and the diversity of the department, I think. So I think it's always good. Information is always good. And the reason I was asking about Prop 209, the city council took something up on Prop 16, which is in effect is going to overturn some of the restrictions that Prop 209 has imposed on cities. And that's why I was asking about that. I wasn't sure if this was if this emanated from that. And so, but it doesn't seem, there seems to be something else, I guess, in place. But thank you for that. I appreciate the information. The other question I had, Mr. Donahue, is, if I think it was, it seems a while ago, but it was just this past Tuesday that we approved some changes to the duty manual. I'm sure you're very familiar with that. There was a number 5 on page 5, number 5 in the duty manual changes related to restructuring hiring protocols and standards with an emphasis on hiring well-rounded, experienced officers that range in age, high school, or have high educational attainment and come from diverse backgrounds and demographics. I think the language in that memo that was drafted by the police department, it acknowledged that we're already doing a lot of this, right, which is good. Very proud of that fact. But what I'm curious about is, it did state in this language that essentially, we're doing a lot of this, but we're going to look at it and we're going to reform it to a certain extent and see how we can, the way I took it is how to improve on what we're already doing. And so what I'm curious about is how do you see this sort of playing out in some of the hiring practices that we're currently using, right? What do we do? Like, what are those recruiters, right? I know Mr. Acosta that was in the photo well, and so I know he's a good guy. He's out there talking to folks, but what I'm curious about is what are they doing differently as it relates to some of these changes in the duty manual and how we're approaching folks, if anything, yet? I know it's
let's
really
go back here to this slide. So when we look at our recruiting efforts, and let's take career and job fairs just by itself for an example. Right now, we are able to do career and job fairs throughout the country without having to travel. And in the past, we've had budgetary restrictions based on travel. We just can't travel to every state and every locale looking for people from across the country. So we selected locations that brought great diversity into the department. For example, we would travel to New York and New Jersey. We would travel to Texas, Illinois. And now, with the advent of COVID and virtual presentations, I can have a recruiter be in a job fair in Texas one day, be in Illinois the next, and New York the next without having to travel. And so I think what we're going to find is this unique ability based on what has been an incredible change in our country to allow for our recruiters to jump to multiple locations throughout the state, throughout the nation, in looking for that diversity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I get, the changes in the duty manual, specifically that one, it seems to me that at the core of it, it's essentially saying that we as a department, as a city, desire higher or high caliber applicants, right? And so I guess what I'm wondering is, as of, let's just say last month and everything that Mr. Acosta and the rest of the recruiting crew was doing, all the work they're putting in, which is great, by the way, how is that fundamentally, if any, going to change at all, given some of these changes in the duty manual, I guess, is what I'm wondering. And I realize we just passed this on Tuesday. So maybe not enough time has been given to really think it through, but.
Well, we passed actually putting it into the duty manual on Tuesday. It's not that this is a new concept for our agency or how we did things. So we do go to colleges and universities and we recruit out of higher institutions throughout the country. And I know that it's a new part of our duty manual, but it's not a new part of our process. And this is definitely something that in the last few years we've focused on, finding these higher level individuals with great ethics, education, well-rounded, and diversity that brings this depth to our department. So as I said, I know it's new to the manual, but it's not new to us.
Yeah, that's fair. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And you should, I'll just state very publicly that I guess, when we talk about well-rounded individuals, I don't know I think our community sort of lifts up this false sense of, if someone is extremely or highly educated, that they're in some ways a better person or have better values, right? I don't think that necessarily plays out. So I appreciate the fact that you guys really go into different places and we're not going by this hard and fast rule that you need to have a master's degree to apply, or something like that, right? So I know it's very nuanced and I would hope that, as I already sense happens, that some of those folks that maybe aren't good matches already sort of fall to the wayside and the rest rise to the top. And so I appreciate your efforts. I think those are all the questions I had. Thank you so much for all your work. We appreciate it. I know that we need to keep filling that pipeline of recruits, and it seems like the crew you have working on this is doing an excellent job. So we appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. They are.
Thank you. Councilmember Arenas.
Thank you, Chair. So sorry, I'm in a household where my kid is playing in the background. So I appreciate the presentation is very thorough. And along the same lines that Councilmember Jimenez was asking in terms of recruiting in colleges, I was originally going to ask you about your recruitment specifically with women, but it also led me to think about some of the activity that our college students are participating in right now, and I'm sure a lot of it is online. And so I wonder if you are also looking into some of the online Zoom clubs that are now, popping up, because that's what we do. We just adjust and we try to connect with each other with however we can. And so I'm hoping that maybe you could tell me a little bit about what you're doing around targeting females, and now that we can't really go anywhere specifically. And then if you're doing anything in the colleges around that.
So we are doing things in both areas. And let me speak specifically about females. So in order to target females, it's not like there aren't a lot of sole female specific gatherings, if you will, right? What we need to do is we need to look at where we can find individuals that match with the totality of what we're looking for, as well as being female. So to do that, we're actually targeting a lot of sports teams, soccer teams, field hockey, softball, and we're working with the colleges and universities to have access to those teams. So building relationships with the directors of athletics gives us access to the players on those teams. And I'll give you an example. At San Jose State University, we have access to the players that play on San Jose's teams. Now, despite the fact they're not allowed to get together and practice right now, they still get together on Zoom and practice. They actually hold Zoom practices almost daily. And we're able to recruit just from that. And the coach will give us time at the end of their practices, or allow us the opportunity to speak to them during team meetings, things like that. So we do still have that opportunity. Regarding colleges, we actually have more and more university classrooms that we're able to jump into because of this Zoom learning environment, where and it's not just Zoom. I use Zoom as kind of using the term Kleenex, right? It could be Google Duo, it could be whatever the university is using. And the university the professor has the ability to give us access to their class, and it doesn't have to go necessarily through the entire university chain of command. The professor relationship that we have with administration of justice and criminal justice, sociology professors allows us access to their classrooms. And by doing that, we can go in and talk to them a little bit about the San Jose Police Department and what we have to offer in all the different jobs. A lot of people think it's just police, but that's not the case. We recruit for communications, we recruit for data specialists. And so people will consider our department not just because they're thinking they want to be police officers, but they want to do something in the law enforcement realm to help society grow.
I agree with you, and I'll tell you, that's how my sister got started. She actually started in youth intervention. She moved into probation, youth probation, and then adult probation, and eventually police. And so I think there's a lot of different fields that we can tap into that intersect with our police department, right? Like youth intervention, programming. I'm not trying to say let's take everybody from probation, but there's a lot of other intersects, and I think we should look into some of those fields, especially as we're moving through a very difficult. I'm so sorry. Excuse me for a second. I let him play. I let him play an online game at the wrong time. It really is, comes back to me. So I was thinking about, just visiting some of these other fields, because you did show us a communication specialist, and so you were recruiting for females, and I know the phone takers and the dispatchers are predominantly a female oriented field for whatever reason, right? That might seem something that appeals to women. Not to say that it should only be women, but I think if it's a field of communications at San Jose State, or I just think that there's probably more access to different clubs and different classes that have a different type of orientation that you might be able to get to rather quickly, and not have to have to drive there and get there. And then be able to connect with maybe not very specifically with women, but maybe in a field that has more predominantly women in it. I did love that picture that you showed us, because they had quite a bit of women sprinkled throughout, and those cadets, and so it's wonderful to see that. Ultimately, I would love to see our police department have more women. As you know, we bring a very unique perspective, and this being a very dominant male-dominated field, it's harder to get into, right? Unless you're invited and you create that fellowship that you were talking about through some of the trainings. And I think that's part of the appeal as well for I'm not going to speak for all women, but for all people. Certainly, us as human beings, we want to stay connected, feel connected, and I would encourage that to continue. Hopefully with some very specific female oriented strategies. That's the end of my comments because my kiddo is too loud. All right, thank you so much for your work in recruiting really good people to our police department.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, and I don't hear, or I'm sorry, I don't see any other hands raised from my colleagues, so I'll just chime in and I want to say thank you, Lieutenant Donahue, for the presentation. Certainly very timely. I was personally interested, as well as Councilmember Jimenez, on how things might be right now given the current climate. And one of the things that has me a bit nervous is the large divide that we're seeing happen within our communities across the country. Almost you sort of splitting sides on either policing or anti-policing, and that somehow if you are supportive of Black Lives Matter movement, then you shouldn't be supportive of police officers or policing, or vice versa, right? If you're supportive of police officers, then there's no way you could be supportive of Black Lives Matter. And so for me, what's concerning is that we may see a change or a shift in applicants because of that, and potentially a drop in applicants that feel as though they don't want to be, put into a pigeonholed or shunned by maybe their friends or family or colleagues or whoever it may be. If they say, hey, well, sure, I believe in social justice. I want to make a change in my, in the world that I live in. As you've said, using the Mahatma Gandhi quote of be the change she was to see in the world. But if they do so, are they then pigeonholed or shunned by those around them? And so that's just a concern. I think it's a little too soon to be able to determine any of that, and maybe never possibly, right, that where you can actually determine that unless you ask those specific questions of recruits. And I had the unique opportunity because two of my former academy mates called in sick the day that I wanted to ride patrol for my reserve shift. So I reached out to the briefing sergeant and asked them to see if they could get me with someone, and the lowest person on the totem pole drew the straw, and so it was someone that was still on their year of probation. So they just came out of of the academy from the end of last year, and then have been only a few months out of their field training. So for me, I had a great opportunity to spend 10 hours, if you will, interviewing this individual on how their process was, how it's been being a brand new officer in this current climate. And I will say that I was pleased that that it was rather positive of a response that I received, similar to what you're saying. That they certainly have had some difficult conversations, maybe with different friends of theirs or family members, but that there was nothing too serious. Nobody asking them to leave the field of policing, and that the community members that they had been engaged with, overall pretty positive. And I know from my years on as an officer, there's always been people that do not appreciate the police officers that we have, regardless of what we may be there to interact with them, or even if we're not there to interact with them. I came from that family myself. My mom, her words were she despised officers, and it didn't matter who they were. She didn't care for the person behind the badge. She had some negative experiences growing up with officers. She'd been actually to juvenile hall for swinging her purse and hitting a police officer when she was younger, and just had this this real negative connotation of anybody in uniform. And so for me, coming from a household like that, an environment, and going through the backgrounds, I know my backgrounder was very interested to meet my mom, and so it was a positive experience though. And for me, I think if there were this major of a divide at the moment, this big wedge that there is now, I don't know if I would have had the support from my parents that I did to go into the field of policing, right? I don't know if I would have had that support from some of the friends and those that I had grown up with. And so that's what I'm just concerned about a little bit in regards to that, because I didn't have that same view as my mom, and obviously now my mom has grown and shifted, right, in her views now, gone and done several ride-alongs, and certainly has met, and as I had officers that were groomsmen in my wedding, right, and that are just close to the family now, and my mom recognizes that officers are human beings just like the rest of us, and we go through things that all of us do, and that we sure, when you're wearing the badge and the uniform, it puts on a certain I think persona, and people have their prejudgments, and unfortunately, and we see that carried out. And so I think that's just it's a concern, and I would like to see, as we come back in the future, if there's a way that we can try to specify in your report if there was any, if we do see any changes in regards to that. I don't know if it's questioning that you can incorporate in the process, at what it may be, but I'll leave that to your creative ability, just in thinking about how we can analyze the impact of what's happening right now in our society. And I know you gave a quick answer today. I do think though that maybe we may see more of an impact, this time next year, and just would like to be able to put that seed in your, plant that seed now.
Sir, you're asking for changes to the impact on police recruiting due to the social political climate?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and then I was going to ask, but I think you cleared it up in your presentation. I believe you said her name is Aaliyah, from our call takers, and was it call takers? Am I correct? No. Yes. So
yes, she's a communication specialist, which is
okay. And we have never had anybody down in recruiting that has been from our communication specialists.
So we've had satellite recruiters from the communications division. We have also recruited out of the communications division in the past. So there's a unit in communications that's called the training and recruiting unit. And they were staffed by seniors and communication specialists, radio dispatchers. And their job was twofold, both to train the new recruits, I guess you would call the new call takers and dispatchers, and then recruit for new ones. So rather than have the bifurcation of responsibilities within the department, where communications was recruited out of communications and the rest of the department was recruited out of recruiting, We are doing this pilot program of having a temporarily assigned communication specialist to the recruiting unit to do it all out of one place. And that's how this came about.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I felt that was positive as well. Kind of as you stated, one, kind of filter catching anybody that may be interested in working for the San Jose Police Department, regardless the role. I think you can update your little image because CSOs are also within there, correct? Right, that we do. And so I think, and I know that's a newer role that a lot of people have been interested in, not necessarily, right, the police officer role. But whether you're interested in moving on to being a police officer, I know that we've had a number of people that maybe go into policing or do the academy or whatever it may be, and that doesn't work out for them for whatever one way or another, one reason or another, and then they go into CSO work. But I just know that's been another great avenue and another thing that, tell me if I'm wrong, but you guys can recruit for that as well?
We do not.
Oh, you don't? Oh, so then that doesn't belong in your image.
No, sir.
Who does the recruiting for that?
So the CSOs actually, we don't recruit for CSOs. CSO job announcements, they have so few that they bring in for CSOs that when they post it, it comes out of the city's posting, and it doesn't go through NeoGov, that kind of thing. And so, like right now, they had an open recruitment, but it only had, I think, a few spots they were able to fill with CSOs in the last go around. It's one of those recruitings that's not year round. It's only posted for a short period of time during which applicants can apply, that kind of thing.
And I'm assuming that we don't have a problem filling those positions, I guess, and that's the case. And since there's not very many of them and there's not many openings, we don't necessarily have to plug that into recruiting.
Correct. And it's also the intermittent aspect of it. When you look at having a recruiter out in the field, if I go to a job fair and I say, hey, come join us, be a CSO, oh, but it's not open yet, wait, and hopefully it'll open in the fall, then it's not as effective.
Got it. Okay. I guess I would assume your recruiting team is knowledgeable, obviously, on the CSOs and their roles, and that, for certainly that there are other avenues that somebody that may want to get into policing can consider, and certainly they can answer those questions. Okay, that's all my comments and questions. Not seeing anything else from my colleagues. If we can get a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the report. We'll do a roll call vote.
Did we take public comment on this item?
We did take public comment on this item. Yes.
Okay.
We had one speaker, Blair Beekman.
Okay, it was just an item, so I got lost there.
Okay. Yeah.
So Arenas,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Roscoe,
Aye.
Jimenez,
Aye.
Peralez.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll move on to item D3, which is our card room compliance with Title 16 of the San Jose Municipal Code, our Gaming Control Regulatory Program, our annual report. Welcome.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Kirill Yermanov. I am the Gaming Administrator at the Division of Gaming Control, San Jose Police Department. And I have here with me Officer Nathan Trang. He is Acting Sergeant at the Division of Gaming Control. And we are presenting today two reports to you: card room compliance with Title 16. And the second one is impact of gambling on crime report. And both of these reports cover the fiscal year 2019-2020. The card room compliance report should give you an overall picture of what the Division of Gaming Control is doing and to what extent the card rooms are in compliance with Title 16 and various gaming regulations. And this report also includes an analysis section where we pointed out to you the number of work permits and number of licenses that were issued, as well as various compliance reviews completed during the fiscal year 2019-2020. And the report concludes that both card rooms are in compliance 16 and have been worked with the division throughout the year. And now we are available for any questions you may have in regards to this report.
All right, thank you very much for the quick report. I know we have another item right after this. Let's go to our public speakers first. Again, this is on item D3, our card room compliance annual report. And either you can raise your hand on Zoom or press *9 on the phone. And we have one public commenter with the phone number ending in 5140.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that you guys are concerned about the crime with gaming and all this stuff. This is a plush plum position for anyone in the police department to be regulating a monopoly of card rooms. And just like the PAL League, it's another plush plum pork position. Hate to use the word pork, but it's true that you guys monitor the kids playing soccer, or you monitor these people playing poker in a poker room with all these cameras everywhere. And who gets these permits? It's whoever bribes who, right? I mean, how do you think the Garden City was able to stay in business all these years? Bribery, extortion, all kinds of things. But it eventually passes because the right people get paid, and you guys know it. I mean, gambling wouldn't exist if it wasn't for corruption. And the San Jose PD is the most corrupt police department ever. You guys are playing the good guys with this. This is eyewash. This is corporate capitalist eyewash coming from the casinos, and this is cop eyewash coming from you people. Propaganda. It's disgusting. You guys know it. You don't care if there's crime because you're making the taxes that you guys are getting off of this. And where's all the money go? I'd like to see a white paper on where all this gaming tax revenue goes that you guys so carefully monitor. I guarantee you, the way you guys skim things, it would look like the movie Casino, only worse.
All right, thank you. And now we'll go to my colleagues. Any questions on this item? Seeing none, so then we will now, if we can entertain a vote.
Motion to approve.
Or a motion, yes, sorry, thank you. We have a motion from Vice Mayor Jones and then a second, I believe, from Councilmember Arenas. Now we can do a roll call vote.
Arenas,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Roscoe,
Aye.
Jimenez,
Aye.
Peralez.
Aye. Thank you. All right, and now we will move on to item D4, which is our impact of card room gambling on crime, the annual report.
And now I would like to move on to the second portion of our presentation today and talk about the impact of card room gambling on crime. So post service call the common dispatch center dispatch of the police department received 132 calls for service from Bay 101 Casino and 108 service from Casino Matrix. 43 calls resulted in reports being made by civilian or by law enforcement, and for Casino Matrix, 56 of 198 calls resulted in reports being made. And of the reported incidents, only 12 arrests were made at Bay 101 Casino, and 10 arrests were made at Casino Matrix. You can see that both card rooms experienced a decrease of calls for service and reported incidents from the prior fiscal year. There was a very small increase in arrests in Casino Matrix and very slight decrease of arrests at Bay 101 Casino from the prior fiscal year. And we are now available to answer any questions you may have in regards to this report.
All right, thank you. And we will go to our members of the public first. If you're interested and you're on our Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're on the phone, plus *9. And again, this is on item D4, our impact to card room gambling on crime. We have Blair Beekman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Blair.
Thank you. There's been some trouble with Zoom possibly lately, and I had trouble hearing the presentation. I don't know if anyone else did. I thought I would note it at this time. I've always been impressed at how this city, excuse me, burp, how the city works towards government or towards gambling healing ideas, gambling reform ideas. A lot of budget money is spent towards that. Thank you for doing that service. And I just thought I would mention that at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. No other speakers from the public. I'll come back to my colleagues. Is there anybody that wishes to speak? And if not, Carol, I'll just thank you for the annual report. I think we have gotten used to kind of seeing these in regards to the statistics as they have been dropping, but they're always fairly low in regards to the actual impact on crime and impact on our police department being fairly low. And so I appreciate the report. So if I can just entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
And if we can do a roll call vote.
Arenas,
Yeah.
Jones,
Aye.
Roscoe,
Aye.
Jimenez,
Aye.
Peralez.
Aye,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, and now are on to our final item, I believe, which is item D5, our Office of Emergency Management Work Plan Priorities Annual Report. Welcome, Ray. And Ray, you're still on mute, Ray.
Okay, now I'm off mute. My wife is always looking for that mute button. Good afternoon, committee chair and members of the public. My purpose of being here today is to give you an update of our priorities for the next year in emergency management, and also sharing some of the successes that we experienced over the last year. And part of this is, yes, there was a life before COVID, and we do hope to have a life after COVID. So some of these things that will be reflected, there's a lot of the progress made prior to and our vision of getting back to normal as well. This will not be a typical COVID report. We're providing that information in 3.1. So this will focus primarily on more general emergency management priorities. For those who have not introduced in the public, my name is Ray Reardon. I'm the Director of the Office of Emergency Management in the City Manager's Office. Let's see if we can get this to go. There we go. In 2017, the Office of Emergency Management was realigned to the City Manager's Office from the Fire Department following the 2017 Coyote Creek flooding and the after-action report. At that time, we thought it was very important to create an internal organization called the Emergency Management Working Group. These are representatives of the various departments who have a responsibility, role, or task to complete during various emergencies. And at that time, every year, we look at what we call our work plan priorities or our objectives with key results. Those 4 objectives that we have in our roadmap or working group objectives include, first of all, the city has a plan to tackle any emergency. So we do have to pay attention to all the variety of hazards that the city faces and make sure we have the appropriate plan ready when the emergency occurs. The second objective is that the employees, residents, and businesses are ready to take action and able to answer a call to action when the time occurs. So this includes the training, the outreach to the public, and other activities we do to try and improve the relationship with the community and businesses and be able to respond together. Our third objective is our community trusts the city to let them know when an emergency is coming, and the public provides us vital information in return. that was very important following the flood, that we had this relationship that we get information from the field as well. And the fourth objective is that our emergency response is optimized through technology. Of course, with the ever-changing technology that we have, we need to stay on top of that and try and use technology efficiently to improve our response as we're engaged with response to the emergency. This is an example of what our quarterly work plan objectives with key results would look like. The 4 objectives are on the top, and below we show the key results of having what would be accomplished during that quarter. In this case, it was prior to the COVID response that we had. So we had tremendous work going on with our plans, the various plans from mass care to recovery to debris management and crisis communication, which was very important as we did go into response this year. For the employees, residents, and taking a call to action, our SERP program is very vital to us. And I'll go through these in more detail of successes that we had. So reflecting on what we accomplished in this last year, this is from 2019 to 2020. We had the Quake Ready Community Resilience Unconventional Conference. This was in September. We had over 200 people attend this event from the community, from the city departments. There was a good variety of organizations who deal with emergencies, and those nonprofit organizations that we support or need their support during response to an emergency. We also developed the city's power vulnerability plan in response to the PG&E public safety power shutoffs. You might remember we did a city council emergency management training session in January. So that was a very important development in our effort to make sure plans are appropriate. And then of course we did develop our pandemic response plan, our response table of 5 stages of response to and 5 stages in recovery to the COVID-19. For objective 2, we had activation of more than 600 employees into the EOC during the COVID response. So that really does demonstrate the ability of staff to respond to the needs and be reassigned to jobs that they weren't typically used to doing. So understanding the role as disaster service worker was very valuable in response here to the COVID response. We did before, by December, we had delivered 13 CERT training sessions through the calendar year of 2019. And that included sessions in Vietnamese, which was very important to us. In the end, we had totaled more than 326 graduates from the CERT program. For the staff, we did conduct multiple 4-day Essentials of Emergency Management courses to make sure the staff were ready to take on the key roles that they were assigned in the Emergency Operations Center. So to date, we've trained over 186 EOC employees in the 4-day training program. For objective 3, making sure the community can trust us in providing them good information about what's happening in an emergency, and likewise we can get information back from them. We made sure that we updated the city-wide website to address access and functional needs concerns, inclusion and diversity, and multi-language requirements. We also made contact with almost 2,700 community members at various events, training programs, community fairs, and those types of events to get out the information about the emergency preparedness. During the 2 October 2019 PSPS events, the Public Safety Power Shutoff, the city's emergency public information officer team used a variety of platforms to reach out to the community and received well over or close to 1 million different imprints in social media in terms of information that people were interested in gathering. During the first PSPS event, we actually were able to dedicate staff into a call center to reach out to those medically on what's called the medical baseline program, make sure those people were contacted and communicated with about what to do during a PSPS event. Then we also worked with the Silicon Valley Strong initiative to create a local assistance center during the COVID response. For objective 4, we identified, we received $2.5 million from the state of California for our Emergency Operations Center build out. And we've been able to start identifying the technology that we would want to make sure we have in the Emergency Operations Center design that we're going through currently. We also integrated various technologies in use of the Emergency Operations Center, such as the use of our Slack as a way of communicating internally amongst staff. And that proved very useful, both during the PSPS events as well as during the COVID response. And then during the PSPS events, we did implement a unique GIS application that the public was able to communicate with us as well to understand what the impact was during the PSPS events activities that we took place in October. So looking forward to 2020 to 2021, these will be our key objectives, is to complete a lot of the plans that we started that we had to put on hold because of our response to COVID-19. So we want to get back to completing those plans and bringing those forward so it's completed. We will continue with our SERP program. We're investigating how to make it a viable program in the Zoom environment. What we rely on the CERT training is a lot of connectedness and team building. So how do you do that with Zoom? That's our big test right now. We will pick up our series of EOC trainings that we do with these sections and develop a multi-year plan. And most importantly, bring a strategic plan together, looking forward to how can we fill the gaps and the voids that we see in response. And as part of our response to COVID, both as part of Objective 1 and 2, is that we will do an after action report of how we responded to COVID and what could be better improvements in case events like that occur, or that the COVID pandemic continues. And so how would we adjust our plans? On our third objectives, we do plan to continue responding and giving out as much communication to the public, no matter what the emergency is, and providing that public warning as necessary. We also want to continue support of community events. We've been participating in a lot of Zoom meetings now with the public, and we'll plan to continue doing that in terms of our training with the public. And then we'll continue to update all our website materials to make sure that we're addressing the access and functional needs of the community. And lastly, as in our emergency response is optimized through technology, we will complete, we have a UASI, that's the Urban Area Security Initiative, and an Emergency Management Program grant on making sure that our GIS capabilities work from the field all the way into the Emergency Operations Center for ensuring data information and inclusion. And then lastly, we'll make sure that we continue the design of our new Emergency Operations Center. We do have some new renderings that are out. So the building will be located on Center Road along with the Fire Training Department Training Center. The Fire Training Center is on the right, and the one-story part of the building is the EOC. And that's the vision we have going forward. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ray. We'll go over to members of the public first. Again, this is on item D5, Office of Emergency Management Work Plan Priorities, their annual report. And if you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand. And if you're on the phone, please hit *9. So first we'll go to Blair Beekman.
Hi. First, to clarify myself from item D2, Anthony Mata is now Deputy Chief. And I was trying to also work towards the ideas to state that recruitment and the police academy can be now a 2-year process, every other year process, instead of its current way it practices. So to go on with this item, it was spoken about at City Council as part of consent calendar, emergency services work, I think, in some way. And I was impressed by what was said, and this is, I suppose, is a continuation of that. And so thank you for these efforts. You know, it's my feeling that the ideas of mutual aid and an OES and OEM they're important concepts in our lives at this time and can actually help bridge some real important ideas how to work together as a community. And I know in San Jose, they have a program called Cater. In San Francisco, it's called SF Card. Alameda County has one. San Mateo County has one. And they're always for the public to be involved with, you know, the community process and how can they participate in emergency services. You know, that's the old CERT ideas, programs, and all that kind of stuff. And you know, it's really valuable ways to work and learn how to work together as a community. And with my remaining 25 seconds, you know, an important component is, you know, the work of civic innovation and how to talk about technology. You know, how can these ideas be, you know, just more talked about openly? How can a bureaucratic process be a more open process? And that's what I try to talk about, that open public policies can help accomplish for all of us, is the ideas of openness to talk about the emergency situations we're going through. Thank you.
Thanks, Blair. And then we have caller with phone number ending in 5140.
Yeah, I mean, you said you're open for questions. I'm wondering, are you ready for the next flood, earthquake, fire, mass insurrection of people? It seems as if San Jose hasn't really been prepared for any of these things. And you know, we have a lot of areas that are that are highly flammable, whether it's wildland or buildings themselves. And I just don't see how this city is ever prepared for anything, especially the flood we had a while back. That was terrible. And we know what the flood zones are. Native American people told us what they were. They told the Spanish missionaries what they were. And the rest is history. I mean, the flood zones go back forever. And still San Jose isn't prepared. So my question is, is San Jose prepared for massive emergencies? Typically, I mean, clearly it's not prepared for mass insurrection. I mean, we saw what just happened, and we saw what happened in 2016. You know, the police department went from playing pocket pool, standing around watching crime and mayhem go on, to then not really knowing how to give the stiff arm to those Antifa and BLM people who were causing problems. So my question is, are you guys prepared? And I hope you could answer my question. That's all.
All right, thank you. And then Molly McLeod.
We've enabled her talking and also asked her to unmute. So you might want to leave, and Molly might need to sign out and sign back in if she's unable to unmute.
Hey, Molly, if you can't accept the unmute, then you may have to log out and log back in if you want to give that a try. And we'll stall to give her some time. I'll go over to Councilmember Arenas.
Sorry about that. First of all, I just want to thank you, Ray, for your leadership. And I know that my district has benefited. Unfortunately, we've been touched by some of these natural or not natural disasters, as the PSPS have transpired a couple of times here. And so I know that you've been very active with our villagers, and we've had a CERT training there. which they always thank me for that, but I know it's not me who they should thank. So I want to pass that on to you. They're always very grateful for the CERT training. I wonder how that CERT training, if it showed itself, if it in any way this year, how did our villagers, did they reach out in any way to you? I don't know. They didn't to our office. We tried to connect with their liaison at the villages. It's been very difficult to stay connected because typically we like to just visit, and that's what most of the residents at the villages like to do. And so to have any real interaction is very limited. And so I wonder, did any of those CERT past participants come your way anytime this year?
And Ray, you're muted again.
Yes, we've had some communications with them. They have reached out. We have a certain neighborhood group. So there's various parts of the city where the CERT teams have really started to grow up. We start to have, well, of course, it was stalled with COVID, but we've reinitiated having these bi-monthly meetings, so every 2 months, and they do participate in those sessions when we have them. And oh, I'm sorry.
I know, I muted myself. No, I appreciate it. I was just wondering if any of those past CERT participants stood up in any meaningful way, as we saw with the wildfires, or even during the pandemic. If you notice, not just from from the villages here, but just in general throughout all of San Jose, if any of those folks stood up as volunteers for to distribute PPE. Have we seen them, I guess, come out of just their neighborhood and become a part of a larger effort?
They've primarily stayed within their neighborhoods, and they've communicated, like during COVID, they made sure other people were aware of the information the city was putting out with our flash reports. They were aware of information and how to get people information. They were checking on each other, which is the first goal of CERT. They weren't crossing beyond their neighborhoods, but that was a good start. They were also, when the fires started coming around the hill, yes, we did have communication with them so that they could start informing people. As I understand, we communicate with them so they could communicate with each other to be ready in case a fire did come closer.
Yes, no, that piece I was aware. I live right next door to the villages, but not as deep as the villages go, because that community is thousands of homes up into the mountainside, and so I know that they were at a higher risk than I was, for sure. So we've just had a lot of trials, a lot of difficulties this year, and so I think a lot of the training has paid off. People are, they weren't as nervous as I anticipated they would be, especially the villages, and so that's why I was asking, did those CERT training folks come out and and participate in any other meaningful way? But I think I think I agree with what you're saying. They're very specific to their neighborhoods and showed leadership within just their community. And so I think that in itself probably helped a lot of our community stay calm, despite the air quality. We still have just terrible air quality out here. Getting better every day, but definitely we still can't open the windows, as many of you know. And so I just want to thank you for the investment, because really it's an investment in our community, and it allows to touch twice or 3 times as much as the people that have actually received the training. And so I'm really grateful for that. Not only for this just past fire emergency, but the PSPS events. I know that we also were touched in with those events as well, and your department has just been very supportive and helpful. And so I didn't want to pass an opportunity to actually say that to you because, you know, by the end of this year, who knows? I'm hoping that we're done with the merge. I don't know that there's anything else, and I'm not going to call it because I know that there's one more emergency that we could see that Californians think about, but I'm going to say that we're done for 2020, and the work that you've laid out has really paid for itself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we all hope so. Unfortunately, 2020 is far from over. We do have Molly back on, so if we can go over to unmute Molly, and we'll see if it works this time.
Hello, this is Molly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. There's nothing more important than emergency preparedness and disaster response in this time. The PG&E shutoffs are predicted to last for 10 years. The big one's going to come, and we're in a pandemic. So when you look at the size of the staffing, it's astonishing they're able to do what they're able to do, and it's far, far too little. I've been showing up on Tuesdays and now on this Thursday meeting because I'm a retiree, somebody who chose at 55 to leave because I wanted to say, what can I do with the rest of my life? And it's been a lot of volunteering, a lot of time on state calls, on national calls, on disaster preparedness, and on pushing for accessibility. Seeing a little progress, but it's really little. So for example, the Silicon Valley cadre has only just started to use the Otter AI for transcription. We may start communicating with DACARA deaf folks, because how is the audio announcements about flooding going to help people who are deaf or hard of hearing? It's not. And the paragraph that's on the website, been pushing for that change for months, and it's really small. Think about it. Access and functional needs includes everybody who's non-English speaking, homeless, transportation needs, elders, peoples with disability. So with transportation and transit being looked at cut 70, 80, or 90%, that affects paratransit. In other words, the distance and where you can get. And we've got folks like Michelle Mashburn who've been contacting and commenting about the streets that are blocked by having outside feeding, which is great. We want to be outdoors when it's possible, but unfortunately, the amount of money that's being spent by the city of San Jose looks like it's not necessarily going to the best resources. The consultants that have been hired, I'd really like to see and hope you will ask about the RFPs, because they need to have much greater knowledge of access and functional needs. Not to mention that employee resource groups would provide a very strong, useful resource for emergency preparedness and response. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm glad you were able to rejoin us. Now we'll go to Vice Mayor Jones.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Actually, this question is actually to my colleagues, Councilmember Arenas and Carrasco. A big focus that I've had for a while, and Ray knows this, is our role in these disasters. And I know that you were starting the process of creating a process for our engagement, and then COVID happened and several disasters happened, and it kind of got put on the back burner. But I want to ask my colleagues in terms of where they saw gaps or were providing support in terms of their involvement with responding to, say, the fires. I know that we didn't have to evacuate any residents in our city, but we should be prepared to address an evacuation. So again, my question to my colleagues is, where did you feel you were in terms of the level of information and knowledge to be able to respond if we had an evacuation? And where did you see assets or resources to be able to help you address that situation?
Go ahead, Councilmember Dennis.
I don't know if if I mentioned this at council, but I did, I have previously mentioned that there was a bit of a gap between the unincorporated areas of my district and the communication that transpired with the agency that is responsible for them. So that's the county, right? And the county was the point with these fires with CAL FIRE. And so I have a member of my team who lives in the unincorporated areas of my district, and that person got woken up in the middle of the night and was told, hey, you can, this is a voluntary evacuation. But middle of the night, nobody wants to be woken up at 2 a.m, especially for somebody to say it's voluntary, right? And then when it became an actual mandatory evacuation, nobody came back to tell them, hey, now it's mandatory. You had to go and look for the information. And so what ended up happening in that particular neighborhood is that many folks just stayed in their homes, unfortunately. And so I think in that respect, if the fire would have reached this side of the ridge, it would have really put a lot of folks in peril, and that lack of communication that gap needs to be improved. And so I think it's just communication between agencies, and we see this all the time in the different systems, is how do we coordinate with one another, especially when it's an emergency and everybody is very busy and running in all different circles. Although I've got to say that our staff went immediately into a very well organized, very in tune with each other, trying to give us as much information as they could, without creating panic. And I really appreciated that. I know and what we did next was our staff created a map that wasn't available to our residents, because our residents just want to see, right? They want to see on a map, am I in that zone? Am I not in that zone? And that really was really helpful for our community to look at the map and figure out, am I in the zone? Am I not in the zone? And I think that was very much initiated by our staff. And so I think the information that we put out on our end was as much as we could receive, and the time that we received it. Could we have released it earlier had we been the point agency by CAL FIRE? Probably, but I don't know that it was significantly delayed. But as you play telephone with any agency, it's going to take some time to relay the message. And so I think everything worked out rather well for my district. Even though some of my district did get that mandatory evacuation, and like I said, it wasn't. It ended up not being perilous to any of those neighborhoods. The air quality was definitely perilous to a lot of those neighborhoods. But if those people decided to stay in their homes, that's their decision. I don't know that, short of having a sheriff go out there and pull them out, I don't know what else we could have done. And so I think those are the gaps. That's my experience. I think our on our end, I think we did a really good job. There's always, looking back, there's always things that we could have done better, because that's the way we are. There's always improvements that we could have. But I think coming out of the EOC, or still being an EOC because of pandemic, I think it was a real easy transition of mindset from one particular type of response to another type that's quite different, but they easily organized because they were already set up to do so. So that really paid off.
Thank you.
And then I think Vice Mayor Jones, did you want to check in with anybody else?
Yes, Councilmember Carrasco too, if she's would like to provide some of her experience or insight.
Hi, thank you, Vice Mayor. You know, some of the is similar to what just Councilmember Arena spoke of. Of course, we've been meeting with Hip Harness and we met with Ray just the other day, which was I'm trying to fix my computer. Give me just a quick second. Why my computer? Thank you. And I have to say, first of all, I'm always very grateful as to how our staff has handled the given situations. It amazes me that in a quick split moment, things can change so dramatically from 1 minute to the next. And of course, we're over here on the hills, just like Councilmember Arena. So we've had to deal with quite a number of things that we've been presented with, not just the pandemic, but of course, then the wildfires and not having the information. For me, the biggest issue has always been the communication between the different agencies and making sure that whatever communication takes place, we're able to relay that information very quickly and efficiently and effectively to our residents. And that's not always the case. And so one thing that I do want to point out, even last year when we had our rolling, what is the rolling blackout? Yeah, the rolling blackouts. I don't know if you remember, Ray, but the maps that were coming down the pipeline in the very beginning from PG&E were so inaccurate. And the majority of the folks that were impacted at that time were again in my district, and it looked like it was going to be much bigger than it was. And so we had pandemonium breakout. We had a lot of panicked individuals and people who were medically fragile. And it turned out that it wasn't quite as bad as we had expected. But anyway, just you learn to really appreciate effective and efficient communication, and that it happened very quickly. And I know that not everything is under our control. I get that, but and I've given this feedback in the past. This is for me one of the biggest issues, because our residents really rely on this and rely on us. We tend to be the direct line to a lot of residents who are not as connected or are not as savvy to get these maps. Although I think that they're learning very, very quickly, by the way. And then the other thing for me as well is in terms of the CERT trainings, I don't know if any of them have been done in Spanish, or if enough have been done in Spanish. I don't think enough have been done in Spanish, or we've done it. We've done enough to outreach to our Spanish-speaking and bilingual communities to make sure that they're prepared. You know, you're dealing with so many other barriers when you're dealing with an emergency. And for our Spanish-speaking communities and those communities that tend to be not as engaged, or for whatever reason have other challenges, CERT trainings become, I think, even more important to make sure that our communities are secure, because you're not going to be there. I'm not going to be there. We can't all be there, but we have to create a network that can react very quickly and that can be trusted by the rest of the community. So, I would really like to see more engagement done in the monolingual and bilingual communities in those underinvested districts, just to make sure that we're able to prepare them. And then lastly for me, and we had spoken about this, I think it was last week when we met, being able to have, you know, we put out a lot of information for our residents that's easily digestible. And especially in an emergency, you don't have time to digest big, you know, pieces of information, complicated information, but to have something that is readily available to them right now while there isn't an emergency or a crisis taking place other than the pandemic, so that people can start preparing themselves. And we've done this out of my office, but it hasn't been anything that it's just information that we've Googled ourselves. But to get something directly from your office and say, hey, this is really what people should, and we talked about this is really what people should be talking about. They should be thinking about. If you're not around your children, who has that authority, and how do people know who has the authority? This is what people should be thinking about. Now we're talking about, there's a very frightening, there's a real fear in our communities, especially with a lot of the fear mongering that has been happening over the years. But just last week, the Trump administration got the green light to start the deportation process for over 300,000 individuals who were here under temporary protective programs, humanitarian programs. So that's Salvadorians, Nicaraguenses, a lot of our brothers and sisters from Central America. And this, and I'm just putting this out as an example. I mean, if something were to happen in our communities, and maybe this isn't a natural disaster, an act of nature per se, but I think these are the things that we need to prepare our communities, even through your office, in terms of, if you are without your children, or your children happen to be without you for whatever reason, whether it happens to be a natural disaster or something as, God forbid, a man-made situation like, immigration coming into your communities. You should have this paperwork on hand. It should always be there. You should have a copy of it, a digital copy. It should be on your kids' phones or in your, but that kind of stuff that I haven't yet seen, and we kind of piece it together. And I don't think that it's necessarily consistent between one office and another. And so I don't want to confuse our families or send them into searching for a lot of other kind of paperwork that they need, but also titles to their homes. And I'll give you an example. We know that some folks have had their homes burned to a crisp. Well, some of these folks who own homes and who may be deported will still be landowners, but then now what happens? How do they turn the title over? And how do other people make decisions for them? So things like that, I think, would be really essential to just have a how-to or a quick toolkit that we can hand out to our families so that they can prepare things that we don't even think about necessarily, including, I've seen preparing means having extra medicine. My doctor has never given me extra medicine to have in a bag, so I don't even know how people would have extra medicine. But so what does that mean exactly? So I have my medicine in my medicine cabinet. How do you have extra medicine in a bag? So things like that, I think, are really important for our families to understand. But more than anything, power of attorneys, pictures of your driver's license, social security, anything that you can, have a digital copy of. And I haven't even done that myself, but that I think is important. So anyway, so that's my feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that from my colleagues. That gives me a lot more context. Again, I haven't, fortunately for me, but unfortunately for the residents in other parts of the city, that we haven't experienced a flood or a fire in my district. But we all know that something is coming, and I just want to make sure that tactically, psychologically, that we're prepared as council members to be able to do what we need to do to support our residents. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate that experience from both Councilmember Arenas and Councilmember Carrasco as well. That is very helpful, and hopefully, Ray, that's helpful for you as well. And appreciate the report back. I know this has been a difficult time, but hopefully, as we heard from our police department in recruiting, they've been able to take advantage of the virtual recruiting opportunities. Hopefully you can take advantage of that with the CERT trainings as well. Zoom does have breakout rooms, right, in ways that you can have smaller groups. And so, we have a new world. And quite frankly, I think, we don't know how long this is going to last. And then I also think that there's going to be a lot of this that just carries over, right, even beyond the pandemic when it comes to this virtual participation. So thank you for the report. I don't see any other comments from my colleagues. If we can just get a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Vice Mayor Jones, a second from Councilmember Arenas, and a roll call vote, please.
Arenas,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Roscoe,
Aye.
Jimenez,
Yes.
Morales.
Aye. Thank you. That moves us on to our final item, public comment. And we do have two speakers from the public that are currently wishing to speak. If you do wish to speak, please raise your hand, or if you're on the phone, dial *9. We have a caller with the last four digits, 5140.
Yeah, I've been listening a lot today, and it sounds as if San Jose really isn't prepared for many things. If Councilman Carrasco wants all this information to give to people, maybe it should be on your website versus having to create a whole new program of things. You seem to have your ear to the ground for all the constituents who don't speak English. You're more than welcome to put that on your website, as are other council members. But to make some huge program, please, you should be in contact with your constituents. The power outages are a disaster. We saw the blackout that happened the other day with the backup power of solar and wind. Clearly doesn't work for the masses. It's great for individuals. But the police department is another disaster. They had spent a lot of money on brand new BMW motorcycles, completely unnecessary during an economic downturn and pandemic. We need BMWs, please. And the police department can't handle anything. They attacked the mayor's house. They arrested one person. I don't know if they arrested him there. His house was, it was funny to watch it vandalized, I have to say. And nobody got arrested. So, how is the police department prepared? You may want to hire people who know how to use martial arts, because it looks as if they're not really allowed to use anything else. And you might want people who know not just martial arts, but verbal jujitsu, versus the way half the officers, they don't even know how to speak English. I mean that in the sense that the way they speak English is terrible. It's all this grunting, and when they ask you something, they end it with K. I want you to do this, K. These guys are idiots. They hire the dumbest people in the whole world. The high school graduates must have a field day applying at San Jose.
Thank you.
PD.
And now, final speaker is Blair Beekman.
Hi. I'd like to thank yourselves for the meeting today and for the work that you did at council last week on police issues. This is a good place to talk about police things and other things besides policing, like emergency services. So thank you. And thank you, I suppose, to the mayor. You specifically stated you don't want to be, he specifically stated he doesn't want to be moving towards technology ideas that the 200-page report offered. And that was an incredible relief to myself. And it was just really logical. And it was not only logical, Councilperson Perales really tried to, talk about that we're going to go through about a year process. And, we're using the words, or, council is using the words reimagine and reform. And, we're having maybe a difficulty, how to describe what the next year can be. Because, as much as there is a big, love of police and people wanting police in their community, There's no doubting that. I don't think that is the question. The question is that we can really, we're at a time to develop important new tools and skills that create the idea of the community itself being the police and policing ourselves and talking with each other and communicating with each other and wanting our good parts. And there's been a lot of study and years of practice about this that are addressing that the police is a part of the prison military industrial complex. And we're trying to, as a country, learn practices how to separate ourselves from that and really work towards ideas of peace, long-term sustainability. And that's new to us, but yet we have the studies and the research in our minds, and we all understand these ideas and how we talk about it with ourselves over the next year. Good luck to all.
Thank you, Blair.
Thank you.
And that adjourns our meeting. Have a good evening.